Hello, good evening and welcome. This is Biz1st Review 360, your weekly roundup of the top business news and developments impacting the Sri Lankan economy. We're going to be doing things a little different on the show this week. We have two very special guests in the studio and we're going to be recapping the entire week, which has been very interesting by Sri Lankan standards. It started off with the signing of the controversial Hambantota Port and Industrial Zone deal, and then that was almost immediately overshadowed by the former finance minister and current foreign minister Ravi Karunanayake appearing before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry on Bond Issuances. Who are our guests this evening? Let's meet them. We have Mr. Rohan Masakorala, who is the CEO of the Shippers Academy Colombo, and Mr. Dhananath Fernando, COO of the Advocata Institute, a liberal think tank. Mr. Masakorala, I'll start off with you. It was your area of expertise that we first experienced this week, the signing of the Hambantota port deal. It was a renegotiated deal that was eventually signed with the China Merchant Company. Is this renegotiated deal much more favorable to Sri Lanka?
Well, yes, one thing is from the industry point of view, we are very happy that this has been finalized and it's now on the way to become operational port. So China Merchant coming in is a positive thing. Of course, there is arguable points about the agreement itself. There are pluses and minuses, but overall Sri Lanka needed this because we as a country, we did not have the capability, the capacity to deliver and operate this port.
Will this deal benefit Sri Lanka and Sri Lankans?
Yes, it will, because if we didn't do anything, we would have been in even a worse position.
Was there no other option whatsoever?
Absolutely no, because there were no other international terminal operators who were invited.
Because that's an interesting thing, because recently on international media, joint opposition MP Namal Rajapaksa said that there were actually two companies that had submitted proposals, and that the other company, which we had neglected, had a better proposal. Is there any truth to...
Not to my knowledge. I have not heard of any other company except these two Chinese companies who originally came and bid. One is engineering side of it, other one is the terminal operator, CMI, who has come in. So CMI is within the top 5 terminal operators in the world. They have the expertise, they have massive number of terminals around the world, and they have the capability to develop this port into a major shipping location because of their global positioning. So I don't see, because if you look at other terminal operators like PSA or AP Moller Group, PM Terminals, then DP World within the first 5, and also other one is Hutchinson. None of them showed any interest here because they have not put their money, whereas these companies through China has some connection to sort this out.
Dhananath, from the Advocata Institute's point of view, is this renegotiated deal positive? Will it benefit Sri Lanka in the long term? Will it be generating more jobs? Will it be spurring business on in Sri Lanka, domestic businesses?
Definitely. On principle base, it's a definite win-win situation for Sri Lanka for many reasons. One is, as it has been mentioned in the media, we have been costed 193 billion to build this port, but which was not at an operational state. Again, we need to invest money to make it an operational state, but when we put things into perspective, it's not the port that brings ships to the port or the terminal. It's the big shipping alliances who will bring the ships to the port. So going with Chinese, as Mr. Masakorala said, they're a big company. They already operate in Colombo, which is, I think, almost fully occupied and up to the capacity. So this will be a win-win situation. Also, there are concerns about the terms and conditions, whether 99 period is favorable or whether we could have gone for a better deal. It's, I think, up to discussion. But in terms of for the balance sheet, because we were 95% of government revenue has been going for debt settlement, and also the world is moving and we have a huge pressure on our balance sheet. Our gearing there was no room for us to borrowing. So I saw the chairman of the Ports Authority said due to the because of this, there was annual repayment of 9.1 billion every year, and they have estimated like a 12 billion profit after this signing this agreement. So for the balance sheet it's good, and also as a liberal policy think tank we advocate for public-private partnerships, because we have seen the entire state trying to control these things has been unsuccessful in the past. We have very good examples, but so this public-private partnership model is a better one given the situation, one thing, and also this shipping business is a different thing. You need to have the contacts, the capacity, the network to bring ships, and that will also have a multiplication impact, because it's not just the ships are coming, you have the supply chain developing, you have the industrial zones, so that have an impact on the exports, foreign direct investment, employment, basically to boost the entire economy. So in our perspective, in principle, yes, it's a win-win.
On principle, yes, it's a win-win, but as Mr. Masakura said before, Sri Lanka didn't have the capacity to run this port by itself. At the same time, one of the concerns that has been raised is that Sri Lankan business is not nearly competitive enough to really claim a stake in this industrial zone and in this project, this entire deal. Do you think that that's true, that Sri Lankan-owned businesses will be sidelined in favor of foreign businesses?
Now, we also need to understand the context that we are in. We are a small country, 20 million population, 20 million market. So we can't expect when everything goes right, perfect, to start something. We have to get initiated on something. This has been also discussed in, I think, the economic summit. You have to start from somewhere. When you have something going on, then you take the multiplication impact. Because if you wait till everything sets up, the business boom, the Sri Lankan, the Sri Lankan businessman coming up, if you wait till that moment, you are running out of time, because every year you pay 9.1 billion rupees as debt payment, and every time you have building pressure on the balance sheet.
Mr. Masakura, do you agree? Do you think that you can't really wait for everything to align perfectly, and that you have to do it and you have to start competing or die?
Exactly. I mean, we were late. That's what our problem was. I mean, they were dilly-dallying with this thing because of various political issues. But we should have gone into, because this was written in the wall that we were not going to start this port the way things are, because as I earlier said, that we don't have the capacity, we don't have the contacts, we don't own ships, we don't own massive amount of cargo, we don't have energy requirements like China does. So China can afford to wait for 10-15 years even to make some profits, because they want a good hold in the one road, one belt location. So for them it's a long-term investment as well for the Chinese companies. Otherwise they won't put their money here for doing nothing. So obviously
that's an interesting. I'd like to get back to that, the geopolitical implications of this Hambantota port deal, and also, of course, the Trincomalee deal that's in the pipeline as well. All that and more coming up right after this break. Welcome back to the program. When we left off, we were talking about the Hambantota port deal, its benefits, the pluses and minuses for Sri Lanka. Both our guests this evening, Mr. Rohan Masakorala, CEO of the Shippers Academy, and Mr. Dhananath Fernando, COO of the Advocata Institute, both believe that this had to be done and that it is going to turn out to be beneficial to Sri Lanka in the long term. I'd like to, you remember previously in the previous segment of this program, I spoke about an interview where MP Namal Rajapaksa was. There was also a former Indian Foreign Secretary who was being interviewed on this thing. And he said, look, we're not really that concerned because we're getting Trincomalee. Dhananath, is that really how a country's economic policy should be decided? Should we be pegging it to, so we gave this to China, let's give this to India, and maybe give that to France? Is that how, do you get the sense that that's how it is being decided? That is how it is, that economic policy is being dictated by geopolitical realities and not the benefit of the Sri Lankan people?
I think anyway, when it comes to economic policy, it's always every country look at their own benefit. So in the Sri Lankan context, I don't think it was decided. I'm not sure. I mean, according to the information available, what I see is it was not decided, this port is to China, this Trincomalee oil tanks is to India. Even I think in Al Jazeera what they said was, we are keeping a close eye on Sri Lanka because they have already boycotted the One Belt, One Route, and they are not very happy with that initiative, so they didn't participate in the China conference. So what they said was, I think even for the Trincomalee oil tanks, this oil tanks has been there for, I think, from the British time, but this has not been utilized. So I think what Sri Lanka needs to understand is, you have very limited resources. There is no point you keep it for wasting. If someone comes and invests and bring money, you need to allow that. And because we don't have the capacity to build it and make it bring it up to operational level. As I said, 95% of our revenue goes for debt repayment, so we really don't have money to invest on this. But if someone comes and invests and brings some revenue, that will have a multiplication effect, and then you have the you ease off the pressure on the balance sheet. Then you can go for you have a little bit of comfortability there. But on principle, I don't think it was decided according to that. But I think for India it was a better deal.
Mr. Masakora, in its current state, you're in the shipping industry, you're a very well respected consultant as well. In its current state, those oil tanks up there in Trincomalee, those 100 oil tanks, are they of any value?
Well, it's scrap metal. 84 of those tanks out of the 104, I think, as scrap metal kind of, you have to really refurbish those. So at least $1 million per tank has to be done, plus the other infrastructure like pipelines and other firefighting equipment, all that.
If Sri Lanka were able to, if the government or CPETCO were able to sort of redirect some resources, do some shuffling with the budget, and it were able to find the money to fund the refurbishment of this oil tank storage complex, would it be more beneficial for the country to be running it itself or to be?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. These things should be outsourced for countries who can afford to do that and who needs afford the volumes that need to handle for their own countries, because Sri Lanka doesn't need we are a small country. Now, if you look at Singapore, ExxonMobil is there. There are massive amount of oil refineries, 7 oil refineries, I was told, in Singapore. So we just have 1 or 2, and those are also not running efficiently. We need to build our infrastructure through FDI. When these foreign companies come and set up, big global giants come and say, this country will transform. The ordinary man from Hambantota to Trincomalee will develop. There will be various, as he said, the multiplier effect is huge when these companies come and set up. The businesses that they do a core business, around that core business, number of businesses grow. So people don't understand this. It is not selling, it is giving them some kind of joint venture mechanism to do business. We facilitate another country to do business because we have a good location. So let's use the location, whether it's United States or China or anybody who wants, let them come and do business here. That's okay. There's no problem. We are not selling. I don't agree on this term of selling. It's a joke for me. How can you sell? You don't sell countries. I don't see any country has been sold out of the 196 countries in that sense. All these are political terms. For me, it doesn't matter. In business, let them come and do business here. We don't have the capacity to do the thing. We don't know the technology to do the thing. We don't have markets to give bunkers. Simple as that. CPC has never managed bunkering.
In spite of all that, now we've seen we have two parties with opposing ideologies that are running the government, and that is of course leading to some very very prominent ideological clashes between both parties, and this was made very clear with the decision taken by the President regarding the East Terminal of the Colombo Harbour. How do you view this decision, Mr. Master?
Well, what he said was that we are not going to sell it. That's what he said.
But then you said that selling is we are not selling these anyway. So does that mean that?
No, but I think what he meant is exactly. I am sure there's a joint venture. He didn't say that we are not going to allow a joint venture to come in. Joint venture is not selling, right? So maybe because people have been given a kind of idea that we are selling everything. This is wrong, right? So President obviously had to say that we are not going to sell any of these assets to anybody. that doesn't mean that he said that we are not going to come out with any business model to work with international parties. I don't think, because although you say the two parties have different, both parties have accepted free market, free economy and FDI. On principle they are accept. How that comes through joint venture or majority shareholding to some other party, that is a different ball game.
Danath, I'd like to come to you on this. So this is liberalization of the economy. Right up the Advocata Institute's alley, and one of your core motivators is to promote the idea of liberalization among the people. Why is it that this message has not gotten through to, for example, the employees at the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, the various other professionals who are opposed to this? What's stopping it?
The main reason is, I strongly believe people have been misguided, misled, and also Sri Lankan, I think, in terms of as a culture.
But ideally, the ideal is in the mind. The idea has its deep roots in the Sri Lankan psyche. So how do you really reverse that idea that liberalization is going to is basically colonialism? If
you look back the results, you can clearly see what has benefited the country. For an instance, I have mentioned this like many times as well in media. If you look at the Sri Lankan Airlines, the loss for the last 10 years was around 128 billion, and the Samurdhi, the largest security network, is around 44 billion. So that shows what we are talking about. But the thing is, for the people, you have to put things into perspective. You just see like just one slot. That will not give a clear picture. Even for the trade unions, what they argue is sometimes baseless, because they are also somewhat affiliated to political parties. They are being backed up by political parties, so they are just carrying whatever told by the political leaders. But if you really look at the country, if you are really passionate about your country, if you are really patriotic, what you need to really do is allow people to do business, because ultimately if people are benefiting, if they are improving their, and there are multiple examples as that, and I think Colombo Port became the 26th most efficient or the harbour in the world, because of we have a lot of joint ventures, 15 to 85% with SAGT and CICT. So that's the model that we have to go, and that brings revenue, and ultimately jobs.
Thank you, Dharanath. Well, I suppose time will tell whether the multiply effect will really work in Sri Lanka. The deal has already been signed, so there's no going back for the moment at least. So we'll see where that turns out. When we come back from this short commercial break, we'll be talking about bond issuances and central bank monetary policy. Welcome back. It's the final segment of our program, and we'll be talking about the other two biggest incidents this week, the Presidential Commission of Inquiry on bond issuances, and of course the central bank's monetary policy meetings. Mr. Masakorala and Dharanath, the Presidential Commission of Inquiry on bond issuances sort of stepped into high gear this week with the appearance of the Foreign Minister and former Finance Minister, and there were a lot of revelations that came to light. I'm not going to go into this in detail because that's already been talked about, and the Commission's proceedings are ongoing as well. What I want to ask the two of you is, as someone who's in the transportation industry, the shipping and logistics industry, and as a liberal policy thinker, how does this, for someone who's on the outside looking in at Sri Lanka, what does this look like?
Well,
will this negatively impact investor confidence?
Well, in my opinion, from outside it looks ugly, so it needs to be sorted out fast. There is a Presidential Commission by December. I think it's now extended until December. Whatever the outcome, I think right decisions have to be taken by the leaders of this country, because otherwise it might lead into a long-term problem, which may be looked from outside as a country that cannot be trusted in doing business. That's not good, because we have so much of potential
this is a serious issue that Sri Lanka is having in the doing business index. Even after the good governance government was voted in, Sri Lanka slid.
Yes.
On the doing business index, on the ease of doing business index. So, is it primarily because of incidents like this, like the so-called bond transaction, and followed by the almost inability, or like the coma that the state appears to be in when it comes to making reforms, like much needed reforms, like customs reforms, etc.
Can I answer that?
Yes.
What I think is that there's been a lot of good things done fundamentally. I mean, we got the GSP Plus, we got the fisheries ban out, there's a national export strategy being driven by the International Trade Center. Government has identified 7 major key sectors to be developed for exports, diversification. All that is been done. A lot of good things also have been done in this.
But why is it not reflecting in the indices, and also in the amount of FDI that's coming in?
But if you look at the statements made by the World Bank or IMF, they are giving a positive direction to the country. But at the same time, this, what you talked about, this bond issue and things like that, may be dragging those onto a different direction, which is not good for the country. That's why this has to be sorted out, and responsible leaders of all the parties have to, I think, put a finish to this by as soon as possible and give the right signals to the world, rather than giving amber and red suddenly. The traffic lights have to be working properly to the world.
Talnath, do you feel that this has any real impact on? Do you feel that this is maybe one of the reasons that IFDI is not really performing where we would like it to be?
There are multiple reasons. I think on the bond issue, I think it's unanimously agreed that if something has gone wrong, these people has to brought in front of law, and it has to be the investigations has to be fair, because that way we can at least give a signal, okay, something has gone wrong, at least we are investigating it right, because we have already we have tarnished our reputation, and it's not, you know, some like a private company, it's a central bank of Sri Lanka. People refer the
governor of the central bank gave an interesting response to a question that was posed by the producer of our show, Charita Fernando, at this yesterday, when she asked, will this treasury bond issue, has it negatively impacted investor confidence? And he said, well, I believe what he said was no, because, you know, we have taken steps to make the process more transparent, and that you know, there's a commission of inquiry, etc. Do you agree? Do you think that it has not had a negative impact on investor confidence?
During the time when the incident was happened, like, I mean, if when the rumors were up, I think there could have been definite impact. But now I think the new governor has taken steps to sort that out, so which has to be commended. But definitely it has an impact, because when an investor comes, they will refer the central bank reports, they will look at the what's happening in Sri Lanka. So when it has like a bond issue which is like related to central bank, that's of course not look good on a country. So on that sense, yes, it has an impact, but also in terms of doing business or ease of doing business, there are many fronts that we have to do reforms. For an instance, we have been taught like imports are bad, exports are good, but what we fail to understand is some of most of the ingredients for exports are being imported. So when you have like high taxes on imports, of course you lose the competitiveness on exports. For instance, in imports you have to pay like 7-8 taxes. You have to pay ports and airports development levy, regional infrastructure development levy, you have to pay rates on a commodity export subsidy, which is cess, and social responsibility levy, special commodity levy, and on top of that VAT. So you have to pay 7-8 taxes when you import, and you expect exports to boom, which doesn't make any sense, and you know how cumbersome is the custom procedures. So if you, for ease of doing business, is having many fronts. Of course, these reputation issues is one issue.
Mr. Masakorala, why haven't these measures, you were talking about these good positive measures that the government has taken, why is it that none of this is reflected in the indices or in the amount of FDI that's coming into the country?
Well, some of these things take a little bit of time to people to absorb it. The changes have to happen. All the policy decisions are announced. Sometimes the changes take a little bit of time. The problem is the unions are creating a lot of barriers for reforms. So government has to push through a tough environment to get these things done. So obviously, to get the positive output of these things will take some time.
Ms. Masakorala, final thoughts?
Yeah, the Chinese port impact also, yes, will affect the policies of the central bank. I think the money will start coming now in stages. Also, the US interest rate seems to be holding up. In the long time we expected the US interest rates to go up further, but now it seems that the US interest rates are also not going to go up as we thought. So which means the policy interest rate should hold or go down here also, and because the current levels for people, it's not too healthy at the moment.
Do you think that going forward, that we are now with the signing of the Hamathura deal and with the Trincomalee deal also in the pipeline, do you think that it's going to be much better, that the outlook is more positive from now on?
Yes, also don't forget about the Port City project. It's also ongoing now. So these are big projects that are taking the country forward, and this will give a positive spin-off to other investors also. We've taken some decisions. I mean, it has announced that he'll take a decision on Mattal Airport too soon. So obviously, if we can get rid of this burden of massive debt for unproductive projects which we have gone in the past and fix them in some balance, I think the rest of the world will see some positive signals out of Sri Lanka.
Nara, positive?
It's positive, but what we have to also remember is we have to do our hard homework. Just the GSP Plus or the port agreement will not just generate results. We have to have our policy matters sorted out, and we have, as a nation, as people, we should be ready to work and drive towards the betterment. Just a deal, just an agreement on foods or Trincomalee oil tanks will not just revolutionize the economy. You have to get into work and do the hard work and do the hard homework. That will be the only way in moving forward. Change is hard, but sadly we have to accept that and adapt according to the circumstances.
Dharanath, Rohan, thank you very much for appearing on Biz1st Review 360, and that's our show for this evening. Thank you very much to you, our viewers, for joining in. There you are. It's positive. The outlook is positive, but you have to be prepared to do your homework. Are you prepared to do your homework? Don't forget to look us up on Facebook. You'll find us at Biz1st Review 360. I'm Nadim Majid. Good night and good luck.